me give you a little background of what's going on that kind of laid a little of the groundwork, or provides a little of the history from where we are here. We are obligated as a Division of Water Quality to protect the waters of the state, and we do that through a number of different mechanisms. One thing we do is we classify the water as to its particular use. There are 5 uses of water that we have. Now, the state engineer has other beneficial uses, but when we talk about beneficial uses of our waters, we drink it, we recreate in it, we use it as habitat, we irrigate with it, and a special classification 5 is for the Great Salt Lake, and I'll talk about that here in a minute. There are a number of wastewater facilities that discharge to the Great Salt Lake, or ultimately, wastewater that's generated in the state flows to the Great Salt Lake, either through the Weaver River, through the Bear River, through the Jordan River, that which comes down the Provo River, the Ogden River. All of these ultimately have their terminus here in the Great Salt Lake. And so about 70–75% of the wastewater generated in the state flows into the Great Salt Lake. So Willard and Perry aren't alone in being wanting to treat wastewater and discharge it there, because that's pretty much where the repository is of all the wastewater in the state. For all of these classifications, and you can see some of these here, numbers 2B, 3B, 3D, I already identified those 5 uses of water. The number 1 use is we drink it, and 2 is we recreate in it. We either swim in it, or we boat on it, we're fishing along it or in it, we duck hunt, etc. That's recreation. So the recreation is classification 2. 3 is that wildlife, either fish or waterfowl that would use the water. And so when you see a 3, disregard the letter after it. That's a derivative of what kind of use it is for the waterfowl. 4, we irrigate with it, and 5, and you see a 5 here, that's the Great Salt Lake. We've pretty much been over the number of years that we've been administering this program in behalf of EPA, which is a discharge permit program. There hasn't been a whole lot of controversy, frankly, but that has ended over the last 4 years or so. Every discharge permit that results in a discharge to the Great Salt Lake is being appealed, and that means it needs to go through a judicial review process. And when this one came up on the radar screen, we issued this permit, or proposed to issue that, back in May, went to a public comment period, and we got public comment. One from Western Resource Advocates that represents a number of environmental interests and wildlife interests, and as well as a comment from U.S. Fish and Wildlife. Now, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife said, we're concerned about our wetlands, and the wetlands are here. The discharge point would be from the new treatment facility through a channel or canal into the wetlands ultimately, and into the Great Salt Lake. So they registered their concern about those wetlands. They didn't say in their letter that this can't happen. It says we're concerned and we would like you to do diligence. The other letter, however, brought up some interesting things. They said, we don't think the waters that you're discharging to were properly classified. We had them going to the open waters of the Great Salt Lake, and they said it should be classified other than this 5 category that I spoke about, and rather it ought to be the same as the Bear River Bird Refuge, 2B, 3B, and 3D. In other words, there's fish there that we need to protect, there's waterfowl there we need to protect, and the 3D is the waterfowl and the fish, and 2B is a recreational activity. We sat down with them to understand that better, and we did a field investigation to see what there was there. And there are fish there. And so, in our opinion, the fishery needs to be protected. There's warm water species of fish. There's fresh water coming in. The farther you get out into the bay, it's more saline, and fish can't survive there. And so, we're not going to be able to agree with the petition that they submitted to us, to the Water Quality Board. We're not going to reclassify it like this, but we're going to protect it with the effluent limits. We're going to protect the fishery. And that occurs with this treatment plant. The concern at the treatment plant would be ammonia. And we are able to take the ammonia out of the water and to protect the uses of fishery, and so that's not a problem. The bigger problem, in our opinion, is this, is the wetlands. We do not have criteria yet developed to protect wetlands. And when we initially started the design of this facility and construction, we were even farther removed from having any idea, are we impacting negatively the wetlands. We've never had a comment come up like this ever in a discharge permit, although we issue them all along the lake. We've never had a comment like this. What we need to do is assess if we're going to have a negative effect with the discharge on the wetlands. And the parameter of concern would be nutrients. The nutrients, phosphorus and nitrogen in the wastewater effluent. This plant does not deal with those, although there is some land set aside that eventually there will be nutrient standards, and this plant will be able to be expanded to be able to meet those. Right now it does not. And so the question is that nitrogen and phosphorus in the effluent, will it damage the wetlands? And we don't have the answer to that. We have met every criteria in our review. We have done diligence, we've done the anti-degradation review that was required, we've public notices, we've received comment. We would be able to issue the discharge permit. We need to republic notice it because we have this ammonia standard in there. But with confidence we can go forward because we've met the letter of the law. The concern is though on the wetlands, and we don't know the answer to that. There's impounded wetlands that we're looking up and dealing with in the north, and we don't have criteria yet there. But there are wetlands that have been negatively impacted because of nutrients. And some would argue that the Great Salt Lake up north is a great sewer lagoon because of all the wastewater going in there. And we may be harming the wetlands, and we can't answer that question yet. But these wetlands are pristine wetlands. They're as good a wetlands as we can find in the state. And the Bear River Migratory Bird Refuge folks want to be able to protect that. So we're going to be making a field visit with them on the 24th of this month. We would invite representatives of the city to come out with us too as we look at a couple of things. One thing is this, the discharge right now goes in with less treated water is going into the wildlife management area. And it's a little surprising to me as we went out into the field just yesterday with them to investigate that. They were unaware, I guess, from what I hear, that the lagoons were discharging to the wildlife management area, although that has been occurring for 25 years. And in the course of that time, the wildlife management area has been engaged in a renewal after renewal after renewal of the permit. So we need to look at that and understand what their concerns are. Here's where we are. If we determine, and we're going to be doing a study over the course of the next month, to try to evaluate, and this is not going to be an in-depth study, but it's going to be either we got a problem, we don't have a problem, or we're not sure. It'll be that kind of answer to see if we can just go full steam ahead and discharge to the wetlands without there being a negative effect. If it looks like there would be a negative effect, then we need to begin looking at some alternative discharge points, perhaps. Instead of running the water directly here, could we discharge it somewhere else, perhaps even along the passage here where the airboats take to get into the open waters of the Great Salt Lake? Can we discharge it there and keep it away from those wetlands? Are there alternative discharge points that we could make sure that there's not a harmful effect on the wetlands? We don't know the answer to that. In the next month we hope to know. Now, if the worst case scenario was, boy, we would really be harming those wetlands, there's a couple of options we have. Not only the alternative discharge point, but there could be enhanced treatment. If enhanced treatment is necessary, we would step forward with the funding to make sure that that happens. I think we feel an obligation to make Willard and Perry whole in this matter. This was not something we foresaw, and certainly not something you foresaw.